My name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.
It is September 20th, 2023. Welcome to EV Obsession, the Clean Technica. It's one of those sponsored daily news show. I am here, your host, Joe Boris, as ever, with Zachary Shahan, Clean Technica CEO. And today we're going to start talking about my favorite thing, giant Volvo tractors.
Clean Technica. You've given us a new name.
Quick, buy the URL.
Yes, this is a hot news from actually Skanska. USA Civil is trialing this. It's one of four fully electric excavators. I always want to say escalators. One of four fully electric.
Technica.
The largest electric excavator in the world. They've had some trials in Sweden and China before, but now they're in. Skanska is using it in LA to on a project to extend the Metro Purple or D line. Confusing. I don't understand why they have a color and number, but yeah. So that's what it's being used for. They got rid of a Komatsu, or they're using it instead of a diesel Komatsu, which I have to rub in the face of my friend in Poland who works for Komatsu and sells these giant equipment to people. But yeah, this is it. Apparently, it's a little smaller than I expect. It's a medium size excavator, so it's not the largest kind, but it's the largest fully electric one, and it's a 90-day trial for Skanska. What else do you have to say, Joe?
Well, I will say that you don't have the picture showing, so that's troublesome.
But
that's okay. We'll get that.
Why didn't you interrupt me?
I just wanted to see how long it would take you to notice.
Yes, no, I'm looking at the pictures.
But I will say this, these things are super important, and there's a lot of different ways that you can look at this. On the one hand, it's beautiful. On the one hand, it is important to get diesel emissions, and especially, this kind of less regulated diesel emissions out of the system. But just from the point of view of job site safety and from the point of view of quality of life for the people who are working on the job site, like, you can actually communicate. You have your comm set up, you're trying to work with people on the radio, you can hear them. It's not vibrating the whole day, it's not loud and hot and smelly and stinky. This is definitely the way of the future, right? We're going to have completely electric job sites. Volvo's really been leading the charge on this. They have the electric excavator, obviously, which you can see in action here. A few weeks ago, they came out with their electric compactor, which is a huge deal. A compactor, also sometimes called a steamroller, and they are really advancing sort of the cause. We saw them at ACT Expo earlier this year, and we've been doing a lot of work with Volvo CE as far as promoting job site safety and sustainability, and they're doing just a tremendous job. I really don't think anybody else is close to what they're offering. Liebherr has some good mining equipment, autonomous and electric mining equipment. They're right up there. I know John Deere's working on some stuff, but I think Volvo's the class of the field right now. And look at that. It uses the CCS charging.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
Look, seems like it's a 50 kilowatt because it says fast DC 50.
Yeah.
But you would think this machine would use like 350 or something. But it's early stages for this kind of equipment.
But you have to keep in mind, they're not running it at high speed. Electric motors are incredibly powerful and incredibly efficient at low RPM. And this is not like a car where it's just constantly running and pushing and pushing and pushing. It's under tremendous load, but it's not that high speed sustained load. So you have to think of it in terms of hours. You're going to get a full 8-hour shift out of a charge like this. And when it is time to shift over, if you're running this thing for 2 shifts or even 3 shifts, that 30-minute, 45-minute shift change is going to be more than enough to top it off, even at 50 kilowatts. You're not, it's not running the same type of load as a passenger car on a highway at 75, 80 miles an hour, which is way outside the efficiency range of the electric motor. This is 0 RPM to like, I don't know, 150, and that's all it needs.
Yeah, and I think you said they're charging it nightly. With the quietness of the machine, they said that there's actually safety issues they have to be aware of, because normally with a diesel one you would hear it moving, turning, everything.
Sure.
And this one's so quiet, they have to consider that as a safety precaution. And I think he mentioned that I don't want to put we're going to have a podcast on Clean Tech Talk with my interview with him, but I think he said Komatsu and John Deere are also working on electric models like this. But Volvo's always been out in front. Volvo with electric buses has been a leader. It's been a leader with electric trucks, large electric trucks. So it's just been clearly ahead of the curve every step of the way. A lot of trials in Sweden. So this has already been trialed in Sweden before the US. I don't know if before China or not, but probably. And Sweden's just been quick to adopt EVs of all kinds, from passenger vehicles to electric buses and trucks to now electric excavators. And we did mention this on the call. Actually, the Skanska exec brought it up, but I was eager to bring it up as well, and you brought it up as soon as we started talking about this as well, because this electric mining truck from Liebherr it's just always stunning to look at.
It's so big. Like, it just, every time you think it's like you have a handle on how big it is, it's bigger than that.
Yeah. It just looks so goofy too. It looks like it's out of Star Wars, right? It looks like that. Oh yeah. but it's just it's been doing good work in mining environments. But I guess it's a little bit more predictable.
Yeah, 100%. But let's also talk about, what these vehicles are. These are all, even the diesel ones like that, what you're looking at there, that R series.
Yeah, what is this? This is
that's an excavator. That's like a big excavator. I don't know if you can tell.
But this is a diesel electric hybrid. Is that what you said?
This is what I'm getting at. They're all diesel electric. So what that means is that they're driven by electric power, right? So they have electric motors. What you're looking at there is electric motors and big batteries and stuff. But these work in the same way that locomotives do, where they have a diesel generator that runs at its peak torque, at its optimum efficiency, and it runs consistently, spinning a flywheel that generates electricity that then goes into a capacitor or a battery and then dumps into these electric motors for when it's needed. And this is something that's been hugely efficient in the world of locomotives and heavy equipment, and basically anywhere where you can have a diesel running at full speed. And, this is kind of the idea behind range extended EVs now, or range extended hybrids, whether you call it a hybrid or an EV. But that's how a lot of these operate. And especially the Liebherr, there's a couple of instances where they're basically hauling. They go up to the top of a rim, like if the mine is shaped like a rim, right? Where they'll load up the truck, and then it'll use its regen braking on a circuitous downhill to effectively recharge its batteries, and that gives it enough juice to get back up to the start of the mine. Now, obviously, that's not every mine. There's a very few scenarios in the world that have that kind of crater-like mining design where you have a downhill like that. Usually you go down into the mine, get loaded up, and bring that stuff up. But in the few cases where it does work, they've had one of these Liebherrs running on pure electric power without ever plugging it in for I think a year or two now, that they've just been hauling it that way. I'll find the link to that and throw it in the notes. But this is just so neat what they're doing with this kind of technology, and to see it, especially from Volvo's side, where it's going from Volvo CE and kind of making that transition to Volvo trucks. And now we're starting to see Volvo cars completely phase out of diesel and keep that promise they made in 2017 that they're going to be a fully electric company or electrified company. It's really exciting. And I think, whenever you have a company that has a stated goal and an actual goal, right? So an actual goal of reducing its emissions, you're going to see stuff like this. And when it's a marketing thing, when it's something that they're being forced to do because of regulation, you won't see stuff like this. So it's really exciting to be talking about Liebherr and Volvo CE on the show.
Yes. And now no, it was fun stuff. I mean, that wasn't even in the show until the last minute, and they were like, "Oh, we got to add this." And
but I love that stuff. I love the big tractor thing. I love the big buses and the big trucks. I get really excited about that in like the same way that I get really excited about race cars. Like, Corolla, Camry, it's great. I'm sure people get excited about it, but give me big trucks and race cars and I'm going to be a happy kid.
Yeah, and normally when we add a story at the last minute, it goes like to the end of the pile, but this was like, let's just do this first. This is too cool. And
we love those guys. We love Volvo.
But on to other stories now. We have monthly EV sales reports from Jose on top EV markets: China, Europe as a whole, Netherlands, Germany, France. And the latest one for the Netherlands was just published, and it continues to astound me every month how much some of these markets are up the S curve. So now in the Netherlands, 45% of new cars sold in the country are plug-in vehicles. If you want to just highlight full electrics, it's at 33%. So 1 out of every 3 cars in the Netherlands is fully electric. That's just bonkers. That's awesome. I mean, I love it. I believe it. It's also like, wow, can we get there? When will the US get there?
We'll get there. And I think, what's funny is if you look at this, there's a segment of cars that we don't typically cover here on Clean Technica, which is what has been come to be called mild hybrids, which are cars that are just like, like we talked about the Camry hybrid or the Toyota Highlander hybrid or the Honda Civic hybrid, where there is no plug. It operates the same way that the original Prius did, where it has an electric motor and regen braking and things like that, but it is not a plug-in car. And if you look again at Volvo only has mild hybrids, PHEVs, and pure electrics. Toyota is massively into these mild hybrids. Even General Motors and Stellantis in overseas markets like the Netherlands have mild hybrid offerings, and they are not included in this list. I think it's really, to steal Toyota's language of calling these cars electrified. If you considered mild hybrids in this, we're way over 50% in the Netherlands. Like we're way past the tipping point.
Yeah. I don't know about this market, but Jose, in some markets, I know highlights the total number that are electrified. I'd have to check this article again, but it's always obviously higher than just the plug-in numbers. But just the plug-in numbers show that it's mass market now. This list also highlights, you see the bold are the full electrics, and the non-bold are the plug-in hybrids, or in the case of Kia Niro, mixed. And you can see 17, sorry, I don't have the full list there. 17 out of the 20 are full electrics. And if you look at the Kia Niro, it's basically full electric. So basically 18 out of the 20 top selling plug-in vehicles in the Netherlands are full electrics. The Model Y is the top selling vehicle of any kind in the country. The Model 3 was the 4th best selling vehicle in August, not even a peak month for Tesla. And then, but the Netherlands has probably the most, I mean, I guess outside of China, has the most diversity. There's always a decent balance of sales across models, and there's a lot of models that sell. I mean, basically Norway and the Netherlands sort of stand alone in that regard, I think. And then this is the January through August numbers, so it's a little different. The Model 3 is further down the list at number 6, but we'll get a boost in September from end of quarter peak. The Lincoln Company plug-in hybrid has been just gangbusters in the Netherlands. I don't know. They have a subscribe option. They've been used in, I know I talked to someone last year who got one in Spain as a rental when they went to Spain. So I think fleets are buying them more for some reason. I don't know. But that's a Geely brand, right?
It's a
underneath?
Geely brand. It's positioned as a joint venture between Volvo and Geely, and it's meant to, as I understand it, it's meant to be more millennial mass appeal and kind of slot into the market below Volvo. We talk about this all the time with Volkswagen, how there's a Volkswagen and then very mechanically similar and related. Above that is Audi, and then very mechanical and similarly related above that is Bentley and Lamborghini, right? So this is the idea of creating that Volkswagen rival that's a little bit below Volvo in terms of the marketplace. And then you have Volvo as the premium entry premium, Polestar as the sporty premium, and presumably Zeekr eventually will be above those brands. But these are all, or Zeekr and Lotus as well, right? Because Lotus is part of that ecology. So this is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, the Link & Co thing seems really popular. The way that people buy those is they essentially subscribe to it for a fixed price, and then they can shift their subscriptions to a new one or a different one as those come out. So it seems to be something that people are responding to. I don't know how it would play in the US. But we'll see. I was certainly working well in the Netherlands. I looked through that article, just to address the point. I looked through that article and I didn't see any mention of mild hybrids, so I don't think they're included in this report.
Yeah, he might just include it in the Chinese one. I'm not sure. I edit these every month, but it's like now they all mix together. But
well, by the time you get to like the 8th one, you're like, well, how are they selling in Guam? Like, okay, nobody cares. I've moved on.
But you have to love the Dutch market, Joe, because Volvo is right up there at the top. I mean, right behind the Model Y, you've got a Geely brand Lynk & Co, and you've got the Volvo XC40, which my PE teacher is driving right now. It's his wife's car. She's out of town. It was just parked next to us at the school yesterday and the day before, just checking it out. And he's like, he has a Model Y, but he's like, well, she's out of town, so I'm going to drive it a bit, just experience something new, see how I like it, whatever. But it's a shiny black XC40. But I mean, you really must connect with the Dutch, Joe.
I do. I even like Max Verstappen in Formula One, but it's just, I really like that
XC on public TV. What did you call me?
What did you call me? No, it's good. I keep having like PTSD flashbacks to your nude scenes earlier. But no, the XC40 is a great car, and the C40 is doing really well, not only in the Netherlands but South Africa too. We covered that a couple of days ago, that these cars are really, really selling well. And it's interesting to me that that's the case, because here in North America, Volvo is like barely 1% of all sales.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously different when it comes to EVs, but it's like 1% of all sales. So to see it taking these big numbers, I think is really encouraging. Well, and especially the XC40 and C40, they have so many neat interior materials. They use that PET plastic that's coming from ocean plastic and recycled water bottles and things like that to try to reduce the amount of plastics that get into the ocean. I really like what they're doing. So I love to see it when they're doing well.
Yeah, I think this is the only country outside of Sweden where they do so well. But I don't know. The Dutch are very, maybe Denmark also, but I don't even think, but maybe the Dutch are quite cautious, practical. Like they see it as a negative to be flashy. Mm-hmm. It's like you want to be not flashy. So I don't know. The Volvo is just like their car. It's crazy driving there. Everybody drives the speed limit. Everybody. There's no one not driving the speed limit. It's eerie. And I asked, well, is it because of all the speed cameras? And they're like, no, it's just a cultural thing. I'm like, Jesus.
But you're not in a hurry. Just like, relax.
Oh yeah, exactly. They live not in a hurry. They ride on the cruiser bikes. It's the best like lifestyle I've seen anywhere in the world. But you see BMW also doing well here. And Peugeot and Volkswagen. If we go to auto groups, from auto brands to auto groups, Tesla drops from 1 to 4 because Stellantis, Volkswagen Group, and Geely, Volvo have so many brands, and they have a whole different diversification approach. But you see Stellantis out in top. That was a bit surprising to me. I mean, they have so many models, but still, I thought Volkswagen Group or Volvo would be at top.
That is somewhat shocking. I like, what would it be? It'd be like the Citroen, the DS.
Yeah, we can go back
to Peugeot.
They have several Peugeots.
Yeah, the well, not the Renault.
Opel's.
Renault's on its own, right?
Yeah, Renault. Yeah, I was thinking, but no.
That's
So
right. Opel
Peugeot's,
is now
Opel's.
Stellantis. Opel
Yeah.
used to be General Motors. I keep forgetting that they're Stellantis
So
now.
it's just, yeah, a bunch of models that add up. And
Look at the Cupra down there.
but really you would think, you look at Volkswagen Group, you got Skoda, you've got Volkswagen, of course, you've got Audi. I would think they're often at the top in Europe, European markets. But we can go from Netherlands to Germany, where it will be a bit of a different look.
Yeah, part 8.
Germany is a wild case in this instance because there's a subsidy change happening. So BEV subsidies for company cars were cut on September 1st. This is the sales report for August. So because they were cut on September 1st, of course, people rushed to buy full electrics in August. So this is a warped month for Germany.
Perspective, yeah.
But you still see what's happening there. And so as it is, it's still not up to the level of the Netherlands, but it's close. Full electrics were 32% of the auto market in this bumper month. And plug-in vehicles overall were 37%.
Right.
Because 37% and
because like 5.3% of the were plug-in hybrids.
Yeah, year to date, full electrics are 19% or 19%, and year to date plug-in vehicles are 24%. That gives more of the overall. 24 and 19 is really where the market's at, because this month was warped. So he's expecting between 25 and 30% by end of year for full year 2023, which is still astounding. 1 out of 4 vehicles sold is electric.
Yeah, I look at this and I gotta say, and I look at these fairly frequently as well. But to me, the thing that is most shocking when I look at these, including in the US, is I want to see Toyota and Nissan on the list, because they've been a part of our clean tech revolution conversation in the early days, like 2008 to like 2012. Every conversation was Prius, every conversation was Leaf. A lot of it was hybrids, and they have just completely vanished from the EV sales charts. I mean, maybe that'll change with the new Nissan Ariya. Maybe that'll change with the new Prius. I've been driving the new Prius now it's been a solid week. I've had it for 7 days now. And
I saw one at the intersection today. I was like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's a new Prius. That's cool.
I don't think anybody's going to buy it.
Well,
I really
Prius
don't.
brand
it's a nice car, but
a bit outdated now. I mean, it's a new era, and Toyota has been slow. But you see here, of course, because of the subsidies, all top 20 plug-in vehicles last month were full electrics.
Yeah.
And if you look at year to date, though, even year to date, 19 out of 20 from January through August were pure electrics. Only the Mercedes C-Class plug-in hybrid was in the competition. So as Jose says,
smart
it's heavily shifting.
Look at this little smart car. Look at that. I forgot that thing existed.
Yeah, because it doesn't really in the US, but it's doing pretty well in Germany.
Good for them.
They like their nice little small cars, right?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time with the different cultural aspects of like small, efficient vehicles and versus big giant F-150s and Dodge Rams and stuff like that. And yeah, there are other cultures. I would imagine it would do well in the Netherlands if they sold it there. But yeah, there are other cultures where you can have something like a Mini Cooper EV or a Hyundai Kona EV, and that's just your car, and it's fine. And this apparently seems to be one of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, even if you look at the top 5 here, aside from the Model Y, which just sells everywhere,
right?
The next 4 vehicles are not very large. You got the ID4, which is it's a small crossover like the Model Y. The ID3, which they don't sell in the US because it's too small. The Fiat 500e, which doesn't sell in the US because it's too small. The Skoda Enyaq, which is like a Skoda version of the ID3 or ID4, something between maybe.
Yeah, it's like VW Golf type size vehicle.
Yeah. So you can see the Germans are really, despite all their wealth, they're quite happy to buy smaller vehicles, unlike the US. You don't really see many big. I mean, what is the biggest? Well, you got the Q4 e-tron, but there's not many big vehicles on here. And then you
But even then, a Q4 is not a big car.
Yeah, I mean, what's the biggest car on here? There's nothing really big on here.
Model Y. Well, the
Audi.
The
Q8 e-tron on the bottom.
Yeah, but that's the last thing.
Yeah.
This is really interesting to talk about, right? Because I want to say it was George Carlin who did a comedy bit about this in the 80s, and he said something about, I talked to my buddy from Paris, from France, and he says there is no poverty in France. And as an American, I look at him and I go, you live in a crappy 1-bedroom apartment. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment with no air conditioning. You have a refrigerator the size of a gym bag. You buy your groceries every day because you don't have food storage, and you drive around in a little 1-liter Renault. Like, to an American, you're poor, right? So I think it's a different, it very much is a different mindset. And you see that play out again and again whenever you look at these global sales numbers. You see what the culture is and kind of what the culture values, I think. And nobody ever said the Germans were not efficient.
Yeah, there's different urban characteristics which come to play. There's also just different expectations for what you should have, what you need to have to be keeping up with the Joneses, to be successful, to be looking good. And I think in the US, like, we just have such a hyper focus on, you got to have big this, big that, big car, big house, big yard. And it's like, even if you don't even want it, it's like you feel like, oh, you have to have it, otherwise you're just failing at life,
Well, what was the joke? There was another tweet that I saw that said, if you have a $20,000 car and $1 million net worth, people think you're broke.
Yes.
If you have a $50,000 or an $80,000 car and a $10,000 net worth, people think you're rich. And it's like,
no, it's true. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a girlfriend in graduate school. Her father was a very successful doctor and a professor at the University of North Carolina, and working with all the big government agencies, did great work on heart disease. And he would shop at Whole Foods, where I was working at the time through graduate school. And I thought he was just like a poor farmer. And then I find out he's this very successful professor and scientist and doctor, and got a big house, of course, as well. But he had 5 kids, I think, or something. But yeah, it was.
I mean, that's the real flex: feeding 5 kids from food exactly. At Whole Foods,
raising more than 1 kid. Yeah. Well, so looking at brands in Germany, this is, again, like I said, Volkswagen. This is just brands still. So Volkswagen and Mercedes have risen to the top.
But this is a question of availability too.
So Tesla might. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to cut you off. This is a question of availability, because we were rushing. Germany was rushing to meet its numbers. So, if you go to Tesla and you say, okay, I'm ready to buy a Model Y, and they don't have one ready for you that day, and you still want to get this incentive, you have to go to BMW, you have to go to Audi, you have to go to these brands that had inventory, right?
Well, this is what Jose highlights a lot with the Model Y, is it's one of the only vehicles you can get quickly in Europe. And they don't buy cars off the dealer lot like we do in the US as much. They order them. And in like case month after month, report after report, Jose says the Model Y is boosted by the fact that it's one of the only popular EVs that you can get quickly. And all the other ones you have to wait a long time for in Europe. So generally that helps Tesla, just having more production capacity and quicker availability. But in the case of this month, I'm sure these brands did everything they could to move sales to Germany, perhaps limit sales elsewhere like the Netherlands, in order to help people take advantage of these subsidies. But you see, anyway, you got Tesla and the four of the top German automakers, auto brands, and so it's sort of, the market is maturing, and you're seeing that reflected in looking like a more normal market with Tesla included now. And of course, Tesla is a German automaker, we can say as well, because it's got a gigafactory in Germany that produces cars for the country. But then if you look at the group sales, again, this is just August, Volkswagen Group is far in the lead, and I don't think that's changing Like they have a lot of models, of course, that are popular in Germany. And then you've got Mercedes-Benz, Stellantis again, sneaking in. Tesla and BMW Group.
Yeah.
Joe.
You know what's interesting is, we talk about all these different groups and we see where like Hyundai, Kia are becoming successful in other markets, and markets like Germany where they're continuing to struggle. And it's, we've talked a little bit about Kia quality yesterday when we were talking about the VinFast cars and the early Teslas. Yeah, and I want to kind of make a point here that all of the cars that we've been talking about, like VW Group, Mercedes-Benz, Volvo, BMW, Tesla, they all have, very practical aspects, but they also have like this maybe reputation is the wrong word, but it's the word that comes to me. They all have this reputation for safety.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that as we're looking at this, and how you don't necessarily think of Hyundai as a super ultra safe brand, but that seems to be changing, because now the latest story that we have, and I think this is next in line here.
But before, we'll jump to that. But I will say they do actually have historically done really well in Germany, and they've been in there ahead of the German companies. But the Germans are finally producing enough that they've taken over and passed up Hyundai, Kia. But Hyundai, Kia still does really well globally, and they do well. They're just right below all these German brands and Tesla now. But I totally get what you're saying. And are we segueing?
We can segue, but I think it's related to the sales. Like, I think it's related to this.
There's one thing that Jose highlighted that I wanted to bring up. He noted that 20% of the top 20 plugins in Germany came from China, which is interesting. He's got them named in the article there, you can read, but it's also just it's interesting, and it's also interesting in light of the fact that the EU, led by Germany, is starting this kind of investigation into Chinese-made EVs and whether to block them.
Yeah, they're trying to decide if they want to do protectionist legislation and stuff like that. Have you seen that Aura Funky Cat?
Yeah,
I love this thing. I'm gonna drop it in the chat.
Very, so very popular, very cool. It's been selling like gangbusters in China, and also they've been exporting it to markets where it's doing well already.
Yeah, it's to me, it's got kind of like a Mini Cooper Porsche Taycan had a baby vibe to it, and I think it's really solid. But keep in mind, I want to talk about this Hyundai Safety thing as it relates to the German auto sales, though. The EU is going to, I love that thing. The EU is going to look at this, and if they do pass protectionist legislation, they're not going to call it protectionist legislation. What they're going to do is specifically target, and this is my prediction. I predict they're going to specifically target the safety aspect. They are going to do some kind of delineation and say, well, the previous TUV safety ratings were not good enough. We need to have greater differentiation towards the top of the market. And that is going to push these Chinese car companies out under the guise of consumer protection. It's going to be that, or it's going to be some kind of privacy concern. They're not going to come out and call it protectionist legislation. They're going to couch it as either a safety thing or a data privacy, data security thing. And that's kind of my prediction. And that's why I wanted to talk about this Hyundai Safety thing in the context of these German auto sales, because I think that is going to be the Achilles heel that Germany and the EU is going to use to go after these Chinese brands. And I think Hyundai, as they've ramped up their safety technology and they've ramped up their prioritization of passenger safety and crash test safety, I think that is going to help them stay in these markets that are going to be pushing out the Chinese.
Yeah, we'll jump to that. Because you brought this in and you gave me the link, I love the retro look of the Aura Funky Cat, both on the interior here and then also on the front. Like if you look at the ones on the left and the right there, it's just got this very like it's like 100-year throwback. The back of it looks more like a leaf, which is sort of funny, but yeah, I love this vehicle. And we get to the Hyundai Safety news now.
Yeah, so Hyundai is getting a lot of awards now, and I think it's partially driven by this push towards quality. If you think about some of the safest cars on the road, Volvo, Mercedes-Benz, they are also associated with quality and kind of upmarket, upmarket attitudes in terms of how consumers rate them. So I think Hyundai's been going down this road for a while now, and they don't want to be associated with any unintended acceleration or anything like that. And their new models, their new EVs are getting all this, national or IHTSA, whatever, top safety pick plus. And this is really interesting because there's now a ton of vehicles that qualify for top safety pick plus. And it cracks me up because I remember going back to like 2010, 2011 when the IIHS first introduced the small offset safety crash. The way that they said, well, small offset crash test, how do we know what a good rating is? Volvo had just introduced the XC60 and they said, oh, cool. So they crash tested the XC60 and they said, okay, this is it. And this is how we know it's good. And if it's better than this, it's good. And if it's not as good at this, then it needs to step it up. But that was their baseline, was how the Volvo did it without having previously tested for it. But yeah, Hyundai has really stepped up their game here, and I think it's going to help them stay relevant in Europe and in the US when we start seeing these anti-China protection laws start come into play.
Yeah, it's a funny because Hyundai and Kia have been for the past decade producing some of the best, most efficient and attractive electric cars. They've been really a leader. The number one thing that's been like a downside for them is they haven't produced enough of them. Like, people wanted more of them, and they're just like, oh, this is as much as people are going to want. Oh, people want more than this. Oh, we're surprised. And it happened year after year after year. And I think they're known for high quality cars. Now, it's funny because yesterday we were talking about how in the 90s they were known for cheap crap cars, and they really improved on that. And now they're known for quality, affordable cars. And that goes in the EV space too, where they've done really good work on aerodynamics and efficiency in order to get the most range out of the battery. And I think people just see them as quality at a good price. And the safety is just the next element of that, to try to highlight themselves as safety leaders, which they seem to be. Then they just further go up that chain of, oh, that's a quality car. And, it's why people bought Toyotas and Hondas for a long time, too. They expect them to be quality, affordable cars. And in the case of their EVs now, they've got some really compelling EVs on the market. The Ioniq 5, which because you own or drive, and the Ioniq 6. But they keep upping the game, but to me, they continue to underproduce. And I'm like, why don't you produce more? Like, you could really sell more if you tried harder. But I don't know, maybe I'm missing something on that, but it just feels like they are happy in their like solid position in the middle, not at the bottom, not at the top. And they're not like aggressively trying to get to the top. But yeah.
I think Hyundai is struggling, especially among the baby boomers and the older Gen X and elder millennials that still think of Hyundai and Kia as a cheap car, right? As an inexpensive car.
Maybe.
I don't think that's true anymore. I think if you compare them model to model, they're either right neck and neck with Honda and Toyota, or a little bit more, or right neck and neck with Ford and Chevy, or a little bit more price wise. And I think that they learned that lesson that Sandy Munro did of, the early quality, the 90s era quality of the Kia and Hyundai. They've learned their lesson that even as they grow, they really need to keep a lock on quality and quality controls, because the first time they send out a vehicle that's not up to their new standards, everyone's going to say, oh yeah, it was a fluke. See, these Hyundais and Kias have always been trash and this and that. And what they're really doing is they're changing the perception, because people are looking back at those old cars and going, oh wow, Hyundais were always cheap, but apparently they were good cars too, because look how good the new ones are. And it might be, my father-in-law had never in his life sat in a Hyundai until he got into the Ioniq 5. And his first words were, I didn't realize Hyundais were so nice. Yeah, I always thought of them as cheap cars. And it's like, again, that needs to be the case when he gets into the car. If he buys a Hyundai, it has to perform. And I think Hyundai is in a position, an enviable position, where they can afford to say, hey, we might not break our sales record this quarter, but we're going to make sure that every car coming out of the factory is righteous. And they can do that, where you still have other companies that are letting some things slide, letting some body parts fall off, letting some, letting some beta systems out into the public because they're trying to chase those sales numbers. And they're less, I don't want to say they're less focused on quality, but quality is not mission critical to their future growth, where I think it is for Hyundai and Kia.
Yeah, I mean, I see that with their EVs. That said, like I rented a Elantra a few years ago, and I had a Hyundai i30 this year in Europe. And God, they just seem like cheap, bad performance, low performance cars to me. So, I mean, they fit their price range in those cases. But I think in the case of EVs, they're doing a really good job. And they build to the market segment they're in. So when they're building an Elantra or i30, they're doing it the cheap way. And it's not like anything's falling apart necessarily. It's just like, oh man, it's not the best car. But then when you're buying an Ioniq 5 or Ioniq 6, it's like, oh, I mean, those are the EVs I find most compelling right now. For if I was like on the market for a new car, like I would definitely be seriously considering or leaning toward an Ioniq 5.
Did you hear that music just now?
No.
One of my tabs was open and I had like
you
crazy...
were talking. I thought you were referring to my comments on Hyundai. I was like, what am I saying? That's so crazy.
No, one of my tabs just started playing random music, and I was like, couldn't figure out which tab it was, but it was like crazy jazz. I was like, there's clearly an ad is happening somewhere that I'm unfamiliar with.
We need a ride along in your Hyundai Ioniq 5 one day for the show. We can do a dual ride along, see whose is louder, yours or my Model 3.
Oh, I'll just mute it and win.
I'll get the most. No,
I'll mute it. I gotta tell you though, so like I said, I had this the Prius. I had it for a week, and it's the Prius Prime, and I was driving it yesterday, and the gas engine turned on, and it freaked me out, dude. It goes switched over to HV mode, hybrid vehicle mode. It was like, and I was like, whoa.
No, seriously. Well, it's when you're used to driving electric, that's just a shocker.
Yeah. Absolutely it is.
So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think Hyundai and Kia can continue to do well. I just don't see them having the ambition to climb much, but they should continue to hold a solid position below the top dogs in all of these markets.
Yeah, I think as EVs become mainstream, they're going to be the ones who have a fully electrified lineup that makes sense. I mean, if you look at what they're doing with the EV9 coming out, they're going to have, a more probably electric version of the Palisade soon. They're batting 1,000. I personally think from a business point of view, they're making all the right moves. But now we're talking about Mini. So the Mini Countryman EV, this is one that we talked about a little while ago. It was first introduced over the summer or at Frankfurt at IAA. And now this week for Climate Week, it is in the US. And, you can go take a look at it at, whatever events that it's going to be at. It's going to do a little short tour. It'll probably be at Electrify Expo in Austin with our friends there. And right now it's in New York, but it'll make the tour. It'll make the rounds of the auto shows in the US. And you'll get a chance to take a look at it. And this is something that you're going to be able to buy this time next year, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first thing I jumped to was when can you actually get this in the US? So it's available for US consumers in the fall of 2024, so a year from now. And as you said, world premiere was at IAA Mobility in Munich. And I mean, I think it's obviously this is not a top selling brand, but it's like it's got that very cool, iconic brand appeal. I love them. A lot of people love them, even though we don't buy them. And in the US, like the Mini EV was never going to be anything because it's too small for US markets. But the Countryman could see some decent sales. And I mean, I think it's a compelling, fun EV. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who want it, but at the end of the day, most people will go for something else because it's got a bit of a premium price for what it offers, just because its brand is so popular, so cool.
I'm interested in this and seeing how this goes, because I could see somebody who had a Model 3, who was graduated into a Model Y, who is now either looking at or they're about to lease their second Model Y. And I could see them getting tired of the same old offering and saying, oh, the Mini Countryman's kind of cool. It's got kind of a fun vibe, in the same way that I wouldn't see that Tesla buyer going for a, a Hyundai Ioniq or a Chevy Blazer. I could see them going for a Mini Countryman.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, a lot of Tesla buyers came from BMW, and
Yes.
so as BMW and Mini offer better EV alternatives, they might decide to bounce back. Yeah, I mean, I would feel it. I would be find it compelling. My best friend in Poland, his wife, like, she was like, only will buy minis. Like, she's waiting for a good electric Mini. They just got a Model 3, Tesla Model 3, but she's still got her Mini. And I'm sure, like, when it gets more competitive, she will want an electric Mini. But so maybe this one, although this might be.
I have a question for you, because you had an i3.
Yeah.
And you understand what that i3 was. Imagine if BMW had built that exact same car, except, the functionality, the mechanicals were the same, but the exterior was the Mini Cooper, and they had just called that the Mini, and that was the Mini Cooper that we got in the US. I think you would have seen, instead of like some weird space egg, you had a Mini Cooper that had a range extender, had hundreds of miles of range, had real fun driving dynamics. I think that would have been a home run. And it just turned out to be a missed opportunity, because, whether it was i3 or i8, it was too far away from the mainstream. It was too out there.
Yeah, it's a really good call. I think a Mini Countryman, like, with that underbelly, would be a better seller. I think that i3, a lot of people like it in the real world. A lot of people think it looks really cool. Online, people always trashed it, said it looked horrible. Like, auto people didn't like it. I still absolutely love it. I love the vehicle. But it was very limited market when it came out. And so if it was the Countryman instead of the i3, I would have got it just the same, I think. I mean, I was always really drawn to the i3. I always loved it, and I still love it. My mom has it now. She loves it. And yeah, I think the Countryman has more appeal, because it's like, it's just a little bit more normal, mainstream. The i3 was always going to be a quirky vehicle that only niche buyers would go for. But yeah, we'll see what it can do. I mean, the sales are still going to be pretty small.
Yeah. Well, and this is the last thing. I'm glad we brought this up. And yeah, awesome timing on this. Volkswagen yesterday announced their all new VW Tiguan. This is their hot selling, kind of golf based crossover. And it's a really neat vehicle in this case, because they have a plug-in hybrid option that has 100 kilometers of EV driving range. That's about 60 miles, a little over 60 miles of driving. That's on the European cycle. We'll probably get 50 miles on the EPA cycle, but that is right there with the Prius Prime and the RAV4 Prime. That is really in the thick of where you want to be. And when you talk about a plug-in hybrid that 90% of the time people are going to drive as a pure EV, that is this. 50 miles of driving will get most people to work and back and a few errands without ever needing to tick on that electric motor. And oh my geez, I just saw the interior and I hate that. That is just awful.
That is busy.
Wow. That is terrible. Like, I am not a minimalist. I am not one of these guys who looks at a Tesla Model S that just has an iPad glued to the dashboard and goes, that's the way this should be. But wow, that is a mess.
I'm a definite minimalist. I love the minimalist.
That's terrible. Who is out there going, man, you know what this thing needs is more screens and more buttons.
I'm gonna open this in a new tab so we can magnify it here. Yeah,
that's awful.
This is like everything, and on top of it, this design on the dash and doors. Apparently, it's just a aesthetic thing, but it just makes it look that much busier.
No, and it's got like a blue stripe plus red mood lighting plus like some kind of weird That is terrible. I was really excited about this, and I'm getting anxiety just looking at it. All right, close it. Nobody's gonna buy it.
They turned everything on at once, so maybe it wouldn't.
Oh,
Uh,
that's terrible.
I don't know. I mean, to me it doesn't look that much. I mean, I really love the minimalist Tesla approach. So
Yeah,
it looks like a little bit more than a normal car to me, but they all seem too busy with all those things. But I think it's that aesthetic, that design on the doors and the dash that make it bad, plus the mood lighting on in the daytime when it shouldn't be. I think
that's a lot. Oh, good. You can watch a movie while you. Yeah, while Trixie driving the Tiguan curbs the wheels, she can be watching.
But don't you think there will be a lot of people who will look at that interior and think, "Oh, look at all this"?
Yeah, I think they got to know their market, right? And I've had a couple of you know who we need to show this to is Derek. He's a Volkswagen guy.
Derek, okay.
Yeah, Derek Markham. He's one of our IT guys, and he's one of our senior editors, and he's a Volkswagen guy. We need to show this to Derek and be like, "What do you think of this?" He might go, "Oh, that looks pretty cool," and then it's like, "Okay, well, then they hit their target customer."
Yeah, share it with that prompt. I'm curious to see. I feel like he's going to be like, "Oh, that's too much." I mean, he lives in the desert.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think he might look at that and go, "That's pretty cool."
Oh, and we had this story too. I don't know. Apparently,
that's what started our whole talk about the excavator.
Yes, yeah, because apparently, Volvo. Everybody's at Climate Week in New York City, including our own Scott Cooney, and everyone's got to have an announcement, right? Because of Climate Week. So this is. I thought it was news. I mean, it was covered. It was put out there like news. Jennifer covered it like news. It says Volvo cars will end production of all diesel models starting early next year, early 2024. And Joe was like, they said that 5 years. They said that in 2017. They announced that in 2017, right?
Yeah, they announced it in 2017. But to their credit, they're actually doing it. Robo taxis were announced in 2017. We still don't have those. And that's our show for today. We got a nice Elon zinger in right at the end.
Oh my!
Don't forget to get your 2 weeks t-shirt from cleantechnicaswag.com.
Do we still have the 2 weeks t-shirt in our store?
I saw it yesterday and I was like, that's so good.
I might get that finally. It's been long. I don't know.
You know what? You should get it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'll get it in 2 weeks.
All right. Later.
Thank you. Cheers. Oh, how do I...